asking, is this the perfect draft ever? And my comment to that was, but what about Bijan? So yes, it's everybody. That's the comment. That's the big argument. Who's it going to be? If Jalen's available there at 10, do you take Jalen Carter? Do you take Bijan Robinson? Yes, like you mentioned, there's other names that you could throw out there. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think you would be surprised either if Howie ended up picking a guy like a Peter Skoronski or something like that. But that's not the popular pick. I mean, everybody's doing these mock drafts, and from everyone that I've seen on Twitter and social medias that everyone's posting it's pretty much Jalen Carter or Bijan Robinson. You even posted a poll on your community page, and that blew up. The same deal. But the last time I checked, I mean, it was just about 50-50. I don't know where that thing ended, but it was like maybe 51% Jalen Carter, 49% Bijan Robinson. So that continues to be the argument. And it's not surprising, but I don't know. Did it change a little bit? Or
well, I was trying to pull up on my computer, but I'm not logged into an account, so I can pull it up on my phone right now. If you guys don't know what he's talking about, it's the community tab of my channel. I did a poll, and it's Bijan Robinson versus Jalen Carter. And right now, it has 3.1 thousand votes. Carter's taken a little bit of a lead, 54% Jalen Carter, 46% Bijan Robinson, which is interesting because if you read the comment section of both of our shows, they would tell you they want Bijan Robinson more than Jalen Carter. So maybe people actually, when they're faced with this debate of Carter versus Bijan, they go, I think we're going to go ahead and take Jalen Carter. So it's interesting. You mentioned my mock draft, just so we have something to throw up onto the screen right here. Here was my mock draft from earlier today. This was using the Draft Network, and so it's like an actual fantasy draft, I guess, website where you can pick to be the Eagles, and everybody else goes ahead and auto drafts, but it drafts pretty accurately. I went Carter 1, Gibbs 2, Antonio Johnson 3. This to me would be a dream scenario for Philadelphia if you didn't get Bijan Robinson. My thought process on not taking Bijan at 10 was the simple fact that Gibbs would probably be there at 30. My big takeaway from this is that after the third round, not a lot of big name wide receivers that make a ton of sense. I know Marvin Mims from Oklahoma is a name people love. He was gone early, so wide receiver is not going to be, I would say, as strong later on. I will say, though, for the pro-Bijan crowd, the anti-Bijan crowd, the Jahmyr Gibbs crowd, there are a ton of running backs based on this mock draft simulator in the later rounds of the draft. Tank Bigsby was there. The UCLA running back was there. The guy from Texas A&M. Like, I could have had a really good running back in round 3 if you wanted to go with 30, taking a better safety or taking another pass rusher like Kalijah Kancey, who was available in my mock draft. So this is, it's a mock draft. It is what it is, but it was amazing to me the talent that was still available at 30 and the talent that was there in round 2, and also the mock trades I was offered that I really had a hard time turning down, which I'll ask everyone in the chat first off, if you were offered, because I was offered this in my show today, Carolina, 39 overall, and next year's second round draft pick for 30, would you do it? What do you think? So you move back 9 spots and get a second next year.
Yeah. I possibly. It really all comes down to, I guess, who's obviously on the board. I mean, if someone's slipping or falling, like the first one that comes to mind every single time for me is a Kalijah Kancey. So it's like if he's still available there, then probably not. But if you're taking a look at the board and saying, yeah, there's some other options, I might be able to trade back and get, a couple different guys. If there's not someone at the top of your board that you're saying, hey, we have to take him now, then yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. You stockpile, you already have so many more picks next year anyway. True. But if you could do that, stockpile even more, I mean, I think next year's draft will be even more explosive because Howie's going to say, hey, we've got all these picks. We could trade up. We could trade back. We could trade for just players on the market in general. So I don't know. It maybe doesn't answer your question directly, but it kind of just depends on who's available or who's not.
Really good question here. Let's just be real. Let's say Jalen Carter and Bijan Robinson are both gone. First off, I'll say unlikely, but he's saying, let's say. I think very likely one of them is gone. Probably not Bijan. Bijan's backboard seemingly is Philadelphia because Atlanta doesn't need a running back. The Lions don't need a running back. The Bears really don't need a running back. I mean, you start looking at these teams that would take Bijan. We're kind of the backstop, whereas Jalen Carter, there are teams. The Bears could take Jalen Carter, get a visit with them. The Lions could take Jalen Carter. Their pass rush was terrible last year. Like, there are obviously options there. But if they're both gone, Josh, answer the question. Who would you take?
Well, I guess I need to see the board, quite honestly. So again, to answer your question, like who's available? I mean,
let's say Tyree Wilson's gone too. Okay, because that's the obvious.
That's the other, right. That's the other obvious one. Man, it's a tough question. I would say, I know Miles Murphy showed out in his pro day, so that's a name that's possibly moving up. I don't know. I'd really just have to see it, who's available, what my options are. But I'd almost consider trading back because the names that I keep hearing are. I think Howie could take a Peter Skoronski. So if it's Howie in that spot, I don't know that he would trade back. But if it's me and Bijan and Jalen, who I think are the top 2 targets, are not there, then I would seriously be saying, hey, you know what? Let's trade back then, because I'd have my eyes on a Calijah Kancey, but you don't want to take him at a 10. I know Joey Porter visited with the Eagles, so maybe they're considering him, but someone brought up the argument of Joey Porter, it would be a reach at 10, and he's not going to be available by 30. So maybe this is Howie already preparing for, we're going to possibly trade back, and then you draft him at a position like that. But I don't know. Like you say, if you take away those two, I would probably be inclined to say, well, let me just trade back. Let me get another pick, because we're already slim on it anyway in this year's draft.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see. I don't think you take corner. We could get into that argument, but I don't think 10 is the spot where you take a corner. You might have a chance at a Devin Witherspoon or a Christian Gonzalez if one of those two didn't get taken in the top 10. But I don't know. I did a show about, the unlikelihood of corners and how their miss rates. Corner is the highest position, or I guess the highest percentage of a position missed in the first round since 2000. So there was a great analytics breakdown of it, but basically saying if a guy ends up playing worth about 60% or the top 60% of the league where they drafted in the first round, a cornerback missed 65% of the time, top position.
Okay, I would not have guessed that. I would have guessed it was like wide receiver or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I would answer and say they probably trade back too. Cool Rains in the chat just said trade back. So did Line Fighters. He said trade back as well. Although, like you said, Skoronski is starting to really become the pick that I'm dreading, but kind of expecting. It feels like the anticlimactic thing is for Howie Roseman to take Peter Skoronski. I mean, Northwestern creates a lot of good offensive linemen. Apparently, he can play up and down the offensive line. He can compete for the guard spot. I don't want to poo-poo the pick, because I know 3 years from now, he'll be like an all-pro and he'll be one of the best offensive linemen. It'll be like drafting Lane Johnson. And no one, regrets drafting Lane Johnson. But I'm starting to think that if you don't have Carter and you don't have Bijan and you decide not to go with either of them, if they are there, I think they go with Skoronski or trade back, like you just said.
I can't wait to see what happens. Obviously, it's crazy that we're like 3 weeks away. It's unbelievable to say that. But I feel like we're going to get a trade back or trade up scenario, whether that's at 10 or 30. I can't see Howie sitting there at 10 and 30, not making any moves. As we know, he loves to trade in the draft. So I'm kind of preparing myself for that. But yeah, it's a great question. Do you take Bijan? Do you take Jalen Carter? If neither are available at 10, what do you do? I think trade back is the most realistic scenario. But another topic I got to bring up, and I got to get your thoughts on, is the news of the agent for Jalen Carter. So Drew Rosenhaus, very well-known agent, incredible at what he does. But he came out earlier this week and said, by the way, Jalen Carter is not going to be taking any visits with teams outside the top 10. What that tells me, and Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network also kind of said, hey, this is what I'm reading in between the lines here, is that the Eagles, and it's just his educated guess, so it's not official news, but he's thinking the Eagles have basically told Jalen Carter, if you're at 10, we're taking you. And I could get behind that. I could believe that, because there's so many other connections outside of just the Drew Rosenhaus connection. But you've got Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, and the Eagles have a good insight to say, hey, does he have character issues? Are we going to have problems if we were to take him? And so that may be why Jalen Carter is starting to seemingly overtake Bijan Robinson in terms of the poll that you put up and what I'm starting to see on social media. So it's not like I'm against Jalen Carter, but it's still the question of, we don't know the full story. But then I think when you start seeing something like this, it's a very telling sign, because, agents don't normally just say, yeah, let's not worry about, potentials of draft trading and all this other stuff. But what do you make of all that?
I thought it was weird, first of all, because you just said it. This doesn't happen. I can't think of a time that a top 10 caliber talent didn't take interviews with other people. It feels dumb. Like, if you're a quarterback, and you're Anthony Richardson, I'm not going to meet with anyone outside the top 10. Okay, well, what happens when someone outside the top 10 wants to come get you? What happens when the Washington Commanders trade up to 2 and want to take you? It doesn't make that, to me, felt like Rosenhaus is trying to save face with Jalen Carter, because he thinks Jalen Carter is going to fall dramatically in the draft, and he's trying to make sure that teams maybe get a little scared and possibly trade up to get him, or stay put like the Eagles could at number 10 and grab him. Other thing is, who has he met with? He's met with Philly. He's met with the Bears. Yep. Has he met with any other top 10 teams? Has he had a Detroit official visit? I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah, no.
Right?
I'm sure he's probably going to, but I think it's just the 2 so far. So I don't know. I'm with you. It's surprising that he hasn't. I would have assumed that he would have, but I feel like it's more of a Drew Rosenhaus has an assurity, because I don't know why else you'd go out there and say publicly, he's not taking any more meetings, because if you're not, and you're not sure, I mean, I don't know, it's just a speculation game, obviously. But if I'm an agent, Like, I don't put that out there to put any more negative doubt in teams' minds. Going, oh, what, Jalen thinks he's the best, and we got all these other potential character issues, but then he's going to say, nah, I'm good. I'm only going to go with the top 10. Like, I don't. I feel like there's a certainty that Drew Rosenhaus has, because it feels incredibly risky otherwise.
Wasn't it Patrick Mahomes that was assured that he was going to be drafted by like the Bears or something? I think Mahomes was assured. I saw something like they was promised like the Bears, we will take you, and then the Bears didn't take him. They went up and got Mr. Trubisky. So these assurities for me, if I was a draft player, I'd be like, that sounds great, and secretly I'd be like, I am not going to sit there and start buying my Eagles gear, guaranteed.
Yeah,
I just said that they might be scared of him falling back in the draft. I still think I'd be shocked if he does fall back in the draft. If he truly falls past 10, if the Eagles sit there at 10 and they don't take Jalen Carter, that would be very, very wild to me. And that would indicate that there's some craziness going on. Unless you remember Nakobe Dean last year, and Nakobe Dean has been on multiple podcasts recently in the past month, basically saying there was nothing wrong with me. There was no injury concern. There was no off the field concern. Somebody somewhere leaked that I was, injured, and he fell to the 3rd round, which is nuts to me. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting.
You'd never know with all the speculation, but yeah, I agree. I think that, not to take us too far off, but if you want to get into the Nakobe Dean argument, like, I think that's an incredible thing. Not only was it a great steal for the Eagles to get him last year, but this season is set up for him to, he has to shine. He's going to step into into the limelight really and have that starting role. But I think you're in for a huge surprise for anyone who may be doubting or like, I don't know if he's going to have a great. I think he's going to be fantastic because he has a chip on his shoulder. He's had it for a long time. And like you mentioned, the podcast and the interviews that he's gone on, you can tell this guy has something to prove.
He's not happy about it.
No.
Yeah, the chip on the shoulder is massive. And the fact that you're not paying him first-year linebacker money, which is what people thought you were going to have to pay him, no extra fifth-year option. It's really good stuff. Let's go to the comments here. Obviously, get your comments in. We're going to obviously try and answer as many as possible. Swift Matty J says, I've seen Jackson Smith and Jiba for us at 10. Please tell, agree with me. That's the last thing we would want. I saw Jackson Smith and Jiba as the 3rd-ranked player on Elliott Shore Park's Twitter or tweet like 3 days ago. I think he had Carter, Bijan, Jackson Smith, and Jiba, which is interesting. You talk about positions of need. Now, I get the idea that Smith and Jiba is probably the best receiver in this draft. There are arguments there. Quentin Jeffrey, or the guy from TCU, guy from USC. There are some good ones here, but I think Smith and Jiba is an absolute freak of nature. He's really good. I just, at 10, that could be a trade back to 18 because you don't like what you have at 10, and then take the best player available, and it happens to be him. Jackson Smith and Jiba at 10 to me would be very bizarre. Now, it'd be like Bijan. It'd be fun. I wouldn't hate it. We'd all be watching, but come on. There's got to be. I'd rather have Lucas Van Ness at number 10 than Jackson Smith and Jiba just for a position of need. And I'm not a big Van Ness fan.
Yep, I agree. No, I don't think that you really have, and you can make the argument, well, Bijan Robinson would be a luxury pick, but I just don't know that you have the luxury pick of saying I'm going to take a wide receiver 3 because, like we've mentioned, depending on who you even get there, it's almost like a wide receiver 4 because you've got Goddard in the mix, and you could throw him as kind of the wide receiver 3, especially with how often he's used. I know there's always injuries, and you got to have backup plans. It never hurts to get an extra weapon, but it feels like an extreme luxury. Don't get me wrong; it would be fantastic to see him in this offense. And you add it with Jalen, but yeah, I'm with you. The only way that makes sense, I think, is trading back, and then you see kind of where the chips fall. It's like, oh, hey, you know what? He's still available. We traded back. We got an extra draft pick. Okay, maybe it makes sense. Let's go ahead and grab him. But otherwise, I can't see you taking a receiver because you can get some receivers later in the rounds, or maybe you look for someone even in free agency. We've known Howie to take forever, to make decisions or to make it's not like he's gonna the offense or the roster solidified before the draft. Like, he's done this right before the season starts, so you never know what's going to happen entirely. But that timeline, I don't know, that comes into play, and I just can't see him going and solidifying for a wide receiver 3 spot, because that's not a guy that's going to be on the field. Let's be honest, that's not a guy that's going to be on the field a ton. You can get a lot of three receiver sets, but the offense is not going to be with the RPO, the ground and pound, the offensive line, like wear teams out. I don't think you draft that and go, hey, let's shift things up and try to play 3 receiver sets all day long. So I don't know. I think risk reward is not really worth it there.
Quez Watkins had 20 some catches last year, 40 some targets. At most you're getting 50 targets. How many targets do you want to take away from Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Dallas Goddard? It's just a question you got to ask yourself with a first-round draft pick.
And everybody's got to eat. So
everybody has to eat, because receivers
get very unhappy. But
they get very unhappy when they don't eat. Very unhappy. Okay, let's go through some of the comments here. There's a bunch. I'm okay with Witherspoon or Gonzalez at 10. They're great players. I think Gonzalez is fantastic. He's one of the best corners to come out in a very long time. But again, when's he going to play, right? When is he going to be actually on the football field? It's literally Jackson Smith and G all over again. Take what Josh just said and copy paste with Christian Gonzalez. I mean, both great players. They're both starters. They're not going to start, and that's a problem. Porter at 30 would be nice. Him and Bijan. I think that's not a bad idea. That's fine. 86 yep. Blackberry Whites. Side note, I can't believe Thomas passed on Lucas Van Ness at 30 in his mock draft. LOL. I thought about it, but if you're getting Jalen Carter, do you need to get another defensive lineman in round 1? I feel like Philadelphia could get, as long as they get one this draft in, the first 3 picks, and AK 2 first rounders and then the second round draft pick, they're fine. You don't need a second. They're going to have so many draft picks next year. They can basically take any pass rusher they want outside of the top 10 because they're going to be sitting hopefully 32 next year. But Van Ness at 30, it would be hard to pass on, but it's not a necessity if you get Jalen Carter because Carter is a pass rushing defensive tackle who is going to get plenty of pressures on that defensive line.
Yep. And there's other names that we can target, and you may have seen, but I think this just broke a second ago, but BJ Ojulari has a visit with the Eagles. So he's another top 30 visit. Talking about a pass rusher. That's not probably a first round selection. You're talking about maybe a second round pick or even the Eagles trading back and acquiring multiple. So that may be a target. I think that Howie's saying, what do we do about day 2 options? So I agree, especially like you mentioned there, if you've got Jalen Carter, I could see it. I don't think it's impossible where, hey, you just double dip and go for the defensive line. But much like Todd McShay's draft, he released the 4.0 version. And so he had Lucas Van Ness at 10 and he had Will McDonald at 30. I didn't really like the mock draft first off, but I just don't think it's a realistic option that Howie's going to say, yeah, let's go D-line for both of the picks. I could see D-line, O-line really is where I see this thing, whether it's picking O-line first and then a D-line or you flip it. If I'm going to say that's what Howie's going to do, that would be where my money is. But again, I always hope that it's Bijan Robinson. So we're holding out hope that actually happens.
Everybody watching, 97 people right now, we appreciate you. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Be nice to get to 97. I'll do a shameless plug. My birthday is tomorrow. I want likes for my birthday. Give a thumbs up for my birthday. That's what I want. That's all I want. I want to get to the same amount of likes as viewers. That's what I would like for my birthday. Give a thumbs up for the show. Jalen Carter will be a star, says Vinny. Ryan has the unpopular take here, but maybe it's the smarter one. I don't know. He says, get Skoronski, build the future of this line on the backs of Skoronski. Dickerson and Mailata will be great for years. The only reason you get Skoronski is if you think Lane Johnson plays one more year, but his contract extension says he's going to play at least 2 more years. And so we're talking about Andre Dillard all over again. Now, at the time, they drafted Andre Dillard to be the starter. There was no Jordan Mailata, and then Mailata came along. But are you going to let Skoronski at 10 sit for 2 years? And if the argument is, well, what about Cam Jurgens? Cam's probably going to play right guard. He at least has a whole NFL offseason, a whole NFL season practicing at right guard, according to reports, because they kind of expected this to happen. Is Skoronski going to beat him out when he was a tackle? I know he played other positions, but a tackle mainly at Northwestern? I don't buy it. So you got to take somebody that really wouldn't play much at 10 and who might not play much for a couple of years. That's my problem with Skoronski. Not that he's a bad player, just my problem with it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here. And I know we've got some people in the comments saying, Skoronski be a day 1 starter, right guard day 1 starter, Stoney Hawks mentioning that. Like, that's the possibility. And I think the only way that you might say, well, wait a minute, are there things that we're not quite seeing that maybe a bigger storyline here? What if the Eagles are not as confident in Cam Jurgens as we believe they are? Like, if they take a Peter Skoronski, does that tell you, whoa, okay, so Cam Jurgens is maybe not ready to play right guard, or they're not impressed with him enough to say, you know what, let's give him some competition because he could actually lose that job. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think it's unlikely, like you mentioned from the reports and what we're hearing, because he's had a full season under his belt to kind of learn and hopefully improve and get ready to play this position. But again, draft night will be very telling because I agree. I think if you take an offensive lineman at that spot, especially like Peter Skoronski, which all the scouts and everybody's saying he might be a better guard in the NFL than a tackle because of his arm length, and you've got some flexibility there. And obviously he could move out to tackle if you needed him to, but I don't see that happening unless maybe Cam Jurgens is as good as we thought he is.
That's a good point.